Collapse 2030. What am I talking about? Well, guess what? There's studies that show it could happen. Or am I just wearing a tin hat? Am I talking out of my ass? We're going to find out next.
You are now relearning economics.
Okay. So, did I do a little bit of clickbait with the title? Maybe, but that's what you're supposed to do on YouTube. But I did find a pretty cool paper, and we're gonna get into it. And I actually modeled it in Ravel. Actually, Steve and I were talking about it on X. And some of its maybe deficiencies. If I had refereed the paper, I might have gone through the equations, modeled myself, and said maybe you need to do a few tweaks here. But we'll get into that. And what this model is in this paper is a simplified version of the World 2 model. The World 2 model was in the publication World Dynamics by Jay Forrester in 1970. Now, World Dynamics and its model, World 2, was the predecessor for the Limits of Growth publication, which was the World 3 model. So there's some history there. And that's kind of where those models kind of simulated, not quantitatively. So let's make this clear. Qualitatively simulated a possible future for us going forward. Now, it kind of alluded in the initial model, so World 2 model, it alluded 2020 to 2030 would be peak population. Now, in that model, it only had a few system states. So it didn't have, let's say, CO2 emissions or anything like that, but it did show declining resources, capital accumulation, the population, agricultural, etc. And it was a very it was a good illustration of the global system on a minimal scale. And then, of course, World 3 came along in the Limits of Growth, and it was much more broad. So I think it was a 16-state system model. So it tracked a lot more things. And its prediction also came from around 2020 to 2030 would be, peak population. And there was many scenarios that you could go through to try to meet it. So it wasn't just an overshoot and collapse and doom and gloom, or it was, which they called, that was the business as usual run, or they could smooth it out, level it out, and it wouldn't be so dramatic. So I'm going to bring up, I think I'll bring up the World 2 model in Minsky, just so if anybody hasn't seen these models, they'll understand what they are. And then we'll bring up the paper that I've discovered, and we'll model that smaller version of that model out, because it's very explanatory in a lot of ways. So you can have big complex systems, right? But it's very hard to present them because they're a big spaghetti diagram, essentially, right? So there are ways to simplify mathematical equations down to their base cases, right? And just show the dominant feedback loops. And I'll try to do that today. And we'll try not to make this too long, too complicated, too mathy, or anything like that. But we'll just go through the exercise just so you can see that's my world, right? That's my world of modeling complex systems. And of course, I apply that to economics. And make sure you are liking, subscribing, and commenting on my videos. Say hello in the chat. We'll check that out in a little bit. Let me bring up the World 2 model. It'll take a second for it to load. Stand by. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2. Bring that up. We'll do a share screen. And we'll make it big. We are big. Perfect. Looks good. So this is that. You probably seen the graph online before. It is the World 2 model. It is it's a medium size model per se. So you have different modules in this model. And I actually recently released a tutorial on my Patreon for my intermediate, pro, and full subscriber members on how you can build this model. And you can download it from my Patreon as well. So you've got things like your population, right? And everything's interconnected. So this module is connected to all the other modules, right? So there's things that are affecting the birth rate. The food ratio, the material standard of living, pollution, right? Same thing with the death rate. The food ratio again affects the death rate, et cetera, and that kind of feeds back through the system. You got things like pollution, and of course, pollution is affected by industrial output, et cetera. Capital and agriculture. So you got a net little agriculture model, which is interconnected in the system, right? Capital investment. The food ratios, and so this is the ratio of food versus bricks and mortar, right? Quality of life, etc. And you can run this model and run different scenarios. So we can do the business as usual. Let's see how fast this runs, and you'll get the traditional world 2 graph, very similar in world 3 as well. Right, and you can see in your bottom right-hand corner the different influences on the stocks, right? The overshoot and collapse in this business as usual scenario. Well, you can run heavy side functions in this model and try to smooth it out. So as you can see, demographics, see some sort of population, little gray line collapses in this model just after 2020. The World 3 model was a little more delayed, and then they did upgrades to the World 3 model where it's pushed it along even further. They've also got what's called Earth for All, which I like to call the World 4 model, or maybe even the World 5 model, which is extended a little bit beyond. It's not about being like a forecaster per se. It's about the structure of the system and how it will behave over time when you have diminishing resources and you're allocating those resources to different parts of the global economy. Now, I can try to let's do a little test here, and let's say we have pollution controls. Let's do pollution controls, and let's say pollution's gotten crazy by the year 2000. So I can adjust this to the year 2000 slowly, but surely. We'll get there. Where is it at? 97, 98, 99, 2000. We can run the simulation. So in 2000, major pollution, global pollution controls come into play. There is something that happened there. But guess what? Not a whole lot. So pollution was brought back down, but it seemed to have just kicked the can down the road. Population peaked a little bit after 2020 as before, about the same amount. You can see the pollution graph right here. They do see the pollution ratio, a dip here, but then it continued on. Well, that's not working. Is there another policy, let's say, we could put into place here that would help things out? Population controls. Let's say, we're being really draconian here, and there's going to be some population controls in 2010. So let's move that up to 2010. And really what the illustration here is this is very hard with a complex system to balance it out or find that equilibrium. So 2010, let's run it again. So now we've got two policies, one in 2000, the population or pollution policy, and then 2010, a birth rate policy. Things changed there. For the better, I don't know. So the birth rate went way down in 2010, and it was the peak of the population. There's some good things there. Now, of course, it's not looking at the political side and the social sides. What's birth control, right? Like, how do you implement something so drastic like that on a global level, and find happiness in their people, right? If you look at like the equality of life and material life, let's look at quality of life. It peaked. It's the pink line back in 1940. The simulation runs from 1900 to 2100. It peaked there. It definitely didn't peak back up, the quality of life. The material standard of living definitely started dropping in the early 2000s. So you can kind of see there are trade-offs to everything in life. Can we make that better? So pollution controls, resource controls. How about capital investment controls? Maybe we started that in 1990. Let's see what happens if we do that. So 1990, we'll say, you know what? We are building too much junk. We're putting too much capital equipment to use on junk. So in 1990, we'll start a policy there. And we'll run the simulation. So now we've got 3 policies over a 20-year period. Interesting dynamics. And this is a great thing about nonlinear dynamic systems. So we've put in that policy, capital control investments, and depending on my parameters, it shot way up. So that's interesting. Pollution ratio is really jumping up in this run. Didn't do nothing to the quality of life. There was a bump in the material standard of living, so I think I might have increased. I gave a shock to capital output, which might be problematic. It's interesting. You look at the death rate too. So it drops down when I have the population control, but then it picks back up later on. That's probably from increased pollution. So anyways, that's the world 2 model. Let's shut this down. We'll take a look at the paper, see what's going on there. It's pretty interesting. Let's say hello to the chatters first and foremost today. Dr. T is in the house. Dr. T, how you doing? Frank's in the house. How you doing, Frank? Tony's in the house. That's not Tony. This is Tony. If you're like the Canadian energy journalists I just fact-checked, then maybe you are talking out your ass. Thanks for the vote of approval, Tony. Tony is oh, we got another person. Twitter. We can watch on X too. If you're watching on X, just come over here and watch on YouTube. We'll see you tomorrow, buddy. Anyways, let's take a look at the paper. I'll bring that up. Let me load it up here. So there it is. It's an interesting paper. I'm not going to and read it per se, but we'll kind of go through it and maybe we'll model it out here. And we'll share screen, window. Make sure we are full. We'll move the chat out of the way. So the paper is called Highlighting the Archetypes of Sustainability Management by Means of Simple Dynamic Models. And so this model goes, this paper kind of goes ahead and talks about what I just showed you, the World 2 model, and how you can simplify it over time. And it goes through a few processes like an overshoot and collapse model, and also a predator-prey model, and shows the dynamics of it. And then it gives this model right here. Okay, and this is a simplified version of the World 2 model. In fact, it doesn't have an agriculture capital sector. So it has the capital sector, pollution, population, and resources, which are non-renewable. But it doesn't have the agriculture. But the agriculture, system state in the World 2 model is kind of like a subsystem state of the capital stock. It goes on to define the equations, which we'll kind of go ahead and do here. But I did notice some problems. But it does give the dynamics. So this is the simplified model. And this is the World 2 model and the business of usual model. Then it goes on to add renewable energy. And so I tried to do the equations that it gives, and it didn't work. And I tried a lot of different ways, right? And I did find some error in documentation, error in these diagrams, which conflict to each other. And it makes me wonder about academics sometimes. This paper is from the Journal of Simulation. I actually have never heard of it before, and I do simulations all the time. So I know the Journal of System Dynamics, which is simulation, right? There's another journal on dynamic systems. I never heard of this one. Anyways, I did find some problems. Mainly, if we go to the first one, we'll notice K8 is a parameter in the model. We go to the equations, it says K3 here and the K3 here. These parameters only use once in each equation. I did eventually figure out, because I was reading these equations and modeling it in the Minsky software, or Ravel as it's now called. And I did realize that no, that was 8, and the parameters are defined later on in the paper down here on how you can build this model. So I can I'll do the build. What can we do here? Maybe we can split the screen. Let's do that. We're going to split the screen. We're going to bring up a copy of Ravel, blank copy. Get this working here. So bring up Ravel. I'm going to do an attempt to split screen on the streaming software. This should be rather interesting. Or replace what we have going right now. We're going to share the whole screen. Share. Okay, now you're going to get the infinite window situation going on. But we'll make this work here. We'll do that. We'll do that. Now we kind of got the whole model. And we can quickly put this model together, I think. Okay, so we've got, we'll do the one without the renewable resources. So we've got non-renewable resources, which they give a short abbreviation for as RE. So RE. Actually, I did this wrong already. So what do we need? We need an integral. Call this RE. Won't worry about dimensional analysis. It gives an initial value of 0.9 for RE. And then we'll need three more integrals. So I'll just pull them down now. So the next one is population. I'm not going to worry about naming conventions. I'll show you a final layout. I call this P. Population, its initial condition is 0.00165. Keep in mind, this is a qualitative model, so we're not using real numbers. We're just looking at the dynamics of the system itself. Then we got capital, which in the equations they label as C. I would have called it K. That's a more popular economic way to denote capital. And we'll skip units for this. Generally, I would always say you should do your unit analysis, but I would just want to run through this quick. Capital is 0.0004. And then finally, pollution, which they denote as PO in the documentation, PO. And its initial value is 0.0001. So now we got our 4 system states. So we can put these over here. We need parameters. And as you can see, there's a set of parameters here, starting from K1 down to K8. Some of them are skipped, like K4, because they're used in the smaller predator-prey models up here. So K1, we can just simply type K1. And this will be a parameter constant, so we'll change the type to a parameter. And we'll just give its value, what it's describing, and it's going to be 0.1. So we've got one parameter. We'll do K2 next. It's a bit of a repetitive process here, but We will chug along, and this one is 0.1325. And K3. This is a great way if you run across any papers, right? Any valid papers, not those economic ones, but ones that are doing valid modeling. This is a great tool that you can use to validate, is this paper properly peer reviewed? K3 is going to have a value of 0.0625. We don't have a K4, but we have a K5, so we'll do K5. And K5, change it to a parameter, has a value of 1.575. K6, parameter, and its value is 0.0375. K7, again, a constant parameter. Yeah, constant or parameter in a dynamic model means it's kind of your system bounds. It's not changing over time, i.e. why it's called a constant, and it is 0.05. And our last parameter, K8, change it to a parameter, and its value is 0.1. Now we can do the equations here. As you can see, it's not a big model. We'll go back up to the part of the paper where it's describing these equations. There's this model right here. So if we scroll down, we can find our set of equations right here. We'll just put them all together, right? So first one is NR, natural resources, and I named this wrong. I was thinking renewable resources, so NR. So we got NR. Okay. Well, NR says it's, minus K1 times NR times P. Okay. Well, you can do this pretty easy. Just take a copy of NR. We'll take our K1 and we'll take a copy of P. We'll grab a multiply operator, wire it together, wired into the top of the integral block. So these integration blocks, you can set an initial condition, which I was automatically doing myself. And I noticed I did something wrong. I put the 0.9 in the units. That's not going to work out. So 0.9. You can put them right in the initial condition like I just did, or you can create a parameter variable as your initial condition, which is kind of a good thing to do for documentation purposes, and wire it down into the bottom input, i.e. times 0, right? And then the integration is a function of this equation, and you created an ordinary differential equation there. And then with system dynamics software, you're solving it through integration. So you can look at your equation and you can see the equation right there. So dnr over dt equals k1 times nr times p. Right? So we've done our first equation. Keep in mind, if you're not mathy, and I've noticed a mistake right there. See that minus sign? So I've got two choices here. Grab a block and do it, and then my equation will reflect that minus sign. It just denoted a little differently than on here. It's simplified too, so if you don't see any operators between your terms, that just means that you're using a multiplier. You can do it that way, or you can save clutter. I'll do it in this case. I'll just go minus 0.1. Either or is going to work. Up to you. So our next equation is for P. What defines P? So we'll bring over P. And P is K2 times NR times P minus K3 times P. Interesting. So we'll grab a copy of P. We need P there. We need K2. We need NR. We need P for the first equation. Grab a multiply operator block, just wire it in. You can put, if you're going to try out Minsky or Ravel, you can use any input on the operator block. You can overload it if the equation calls for it, so you can just use one operating block. Already done something wrong. We'll check that. So we've got this flow equation. We're not defining the flows with names, but essentially this has created a flow that can go into the stock. The next part of the equation is K3 times P. So we can take another copy of P, copy, take K3, multiply block, wire it up. And so what's it saying? You see this term right here saying minus. We got to minus this. So this minus this. Okay. That gives us our two flows, our inflow and our outflow. Grab minus operator. Obviously, it's more critical on what input you do here. So the first part of your terms, obviously, the top input block, so it's plus, and then you're minusing on the bottom. And then you can wire that as a function of P. And we've defined our next equation there. You can see that right there, dp over dt equals K2 times NR times P minus K3 times P. We'll do our next equation here. Next equation is C, which is K5 times NR times P times C minus K6 times C times PO. Grab K5. We need a copy of NR. Let's copy that from anywhere. We need a copy of P. Copy that from anywhere. And we need a copy of C. So some reinforcing growth that looks like on this one. And we've got our first inflow equation here. Oh, wrong one. This one right here. So what do we need? We need a multiply block. Again, wire all that together. We've defined a flow. And we'll do the next part of this ordinary differential equation. We need K6. We need a copy of C. And we need a copy of PO, which is pollution. Multiply block. This is a very simple model. Obviously, you can get far more complicated when you're dealing with like input, output functions, etc., etc. There we go. And we need, same as the equation before, one's an inflow, one's an outflow. Wire it together. There we go. One more equation to go. So we need K7 times NR times C. Easy enough. Grab NR. Copy. And a copy of C. You can see how these are interconnected, and I'll show you a better layout here after we're done building this out. Same as before. And also, you can just use your keypad, right? And an asterisk will give you a multiply block. It's up to you, right? You can go up into your menu. You can use your toolbar here and click on it. Lots of ways. I like the keyboard shortcuts. It does make it a lot quicker. And then the final part of that equation where they make a mistake, and this took me about 45 minutes to figure out, was it's not K3, it's actually K8. Which is defined in the parameters, but when they defined it, the equation here, obviously they're putting K3. I don't know. It's problematic for an academic paper. You'd figure you'd catch, your four equations for this model. You want to make sure they're all correct. And it needs a copy of PO. Same as before. grab a multiply block, wire it up. And this is an inflow and outflow. So one's adding to the stock, which is your integral right there, and one's subtracting from it. And we have a full model. So we just defined this set of equations in the paper. You can look at it. Remember, Minsky is self-documenting. So you can look at, so if you want to compare NR, okay, well, NR is not defined as an ordinary differential equation there. It's just implied by this little mark right there. So NR equals minus K1 times NR times P. You can look at it. Now I've changed K1 to a minus, so I don't need the minus sign in there. So the value is actually a minus value times NR times P. P for population is K2 times NR times P minus K3 times P. If we look at it, K2 times NR times P minus K3 times P. And so you're self-documenting through the model. You can even look at a summary, and especially in a big model, you can look at a breakdown of the different equations. You could have flow equations, etc., etc. And you can edit it in there from there. So we'll maximize the screen. We don't need the paper anymore. We can grab a graph. See how this model behaves. We will put P on this axis and then everything else on the left axis. Take a copy of C. Take a copy of C. Take a copy of PO. Take a copy of C. And just stand by for 1 sec. Unmute my mic. I'm back here. Sorry, guys. And we can check our simulation settings. Now, the lady that wrote this paper gave a convoluted setting for her step size. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. It might have made sense for the oscillation model that she does when she adds the energy component, which I couldn't figure out the equations. They made no sense and made the model collapse. In this sense, because it's an overshoot and collapse model, you can just use a first order solver. If it's an oscillating model, you're most likely going to need a fourth order solver. And you can just do step sizes as one, right? And we can define the time unit in this model as year. Doesn't matter because we're not doing our time units. What else can we do? This model actually had a start time of 1900 to 2100. Now that doesn't matter. You could just run from 0 to 200 if you wanted to. I'm just, matching the parameter settings. And this should work. Should do something. And we get our overshoot and collapse model. So this is a simplified version of what I was showing you before. And I'll come back. Now, I laid this out pretty nice in another model that I've made available for download on my Patreon. Might as well show it. See how the chat's doing. Any good questions you got? What's cracking in the chat? I probably missed a whole bunch here. We'll start from the latest one. And Tony's probably making fun of me. Hey, Ty, there's a new term called AI slop. It's a reference to the AI-generated garbage that people are flooding YouTube with. What you have here is academic slop. It's just stuff people pump out. So you mean to the paper? Hopefully not me. And if it's me, F you, Tony. Considering I'm bringing you on Friday, but I don't think you're talking about me. It might. I don't think it's AI slop. I think I looked at the spelling and stuff, and I wonder if this journal's from Europe. Because some of the English is loose, but I'm really I question if you so the other model that I was trying to model where it had renewable energy was just a fifth equation. And you know me, Tony, I'm not a mathematician per se, but I know how to model complex systems really simply. It's quite easy. And so I did many variations of this. And actually, you know what? I'll email you the paper. Maybe you can figure it out because I sure as hell couldn't. I tried changing the solver settings because obviously it became an oscillatory system at that point. And so I tried for a fourth order solver, just changing the step size. I couldn't get it to behave correctly. It just collapsed the system. But it might be it might be AI slop. I'll have to look at the journal itself. Again, people, I put the journal paper on my Patreon if you want to check it out. What else do we have here? Yes, no, I know you're talking to the paper, Tony. I was giving you a hard time. Frank, what's going on, Frank? It could collapse a financial system, but the more important thing is real goods and services. If they can be produced in a number that would accommodate the population, the issue would be a policy. Sure. Sounds right. Anyways, let's go back to the model. If you got any questions, put them in the chat. I'm more than willing to answer them. But I want to show a little more causal loop version of the model. So stand by here. Let me shut down the old one. I find Ravel is extremely intensive. So if I got Ravel open, there's a delay with my voice and my video. So, excuse that as I open and close them. Close the paper. AI slop, Tony has called it. You heard it here first. AI slop. It could be. I'll have to do some investigating on this journal. Because like I said, Tony, I never heard of it before, right? Most of the system dynamics that I've come across papers have been from the System Dynamics Society Journal, which was endorsed by Jay Forrester and the like. Of course, now Jay Forrester has passed. He's no longer with us. But, that's been my credible source for information. And we will limit the chat. So I laid it out a little bit differently. Maybe I can remove my face. Yes, I can. Remove my face. And so, as a system dynamicist, I'm really interested in the dominant feedback loops. Like, how does this system really behave? So we can run it. I made this one a little bit nicer, right? Took some time. This was yesterday morning. We can get the dynamics out of it. But why is it doing that? Why is the system behaving that way? So when we start building out bigger systems and we want to understand them to leverage policies, you want to leverage the right feedback loop, right? Often, like in system dynamics, you have so many counterbalancing feedback loops that you think a policy might work. But when you implement it and you run it in a nonlinear system, even a small one like this, you get vastly different results than what your mental model was expecting. This model, and this is what I was taught to simplify it, even if you're not a mathematician, your dominant loops, when you start a model, will generally be the loops where you have multiple system states. As you can see, this is one where you've got two system states in this loop. So you've got population and non-renewable resources, right? And that's the dominant loop that starts this model right here. And as your resources decline, it becomes less dominant. And so this other reinforcing loop, which is self-reinforcing from population growth, it becomes less dominant, and your balancing feedback loop then kicks in. And so this would be des in this model, right? I also noticed when I laid it out, these are two distinctly kind of moduled models. So the feedback loops don't go over here. They send information over here. So this is to your capital and to your pollution. But pollution and capital don't send information back to resources or population. This is where I'd have a little bit of trouble with this model because it doesn't adhere to even Forrester's simplified limits to growth model world 2, where these stocks actually interact with these stocks through a lot of different feedback loops. But if you come over here and you look at it, you can see these reinforcing loop. This reinforcing loop is going to be, dominated by this dominating loop here. Okay, so it's really strong at the beginning of the model. This loop, because of this loop right here, the small loop for population's really strong. That feeds into this loop right here, along with this big loop feeds into this loop here. So the second part of the model where you can kind of see it's divided. So now you've got these dominating loops going on. And here's another big dominating loop, the secondary dominating loop, because it's got two stocks in it. Remember what I said before? If you've got two stocks in your loop, those loops tend to be the dominant ones at the beginning of the modeling run. The crazy thing is this is a balancing feedback loop, right? And how do you know what it's the balancing feedback loop and a reinforcing feedback loop? In system dynamics, we replace the term positive with reinforcing and balancing with negative. The engineers, Tony's probably watching, he's like, I don't care, whatever. It's a positive sign and a minus sign. But because system dynamics is used a lot in the social sciences, we don't want to infer that something positive is good and something negative is bad. So the term balancing and reinforcing is used, right? So this is a big balancing loop. So it's actually retarding the growth of this system. And so it doesn't massively overshoot and really then under. So it's actually balancing this system out here. And it's a big balancing loop. But as this big balancing loop degrades, this loop degrades and this one degrades, this one starts to kick in. So it becomes a little more dominant than this loop, right? And so now your capital starts declining. And then this balancing feedback loop comes into play. And so you can kind of see how this system operates, why the system is rising in the beginning and why it falls in the end. And just a little disclaimer, another easy way to figure out if you have a reinforcing loop or a feedback loop or a balancing feedback loop is how many minus signs do you have and how many positive signs do you have. So for instance, in this one, we have all positive signs in it. And in fact, it's just one. You know it's a balancing feedback or a negative feedback loop if there is 1, 3, 5. What I'm saying is odd numbers in the loop of negative terminals in your model, and it's displayed differently in each system dynamic package. Then you know that's a balancing feedback loop or a negative feedback loop. If it has even numbers or 0 negative inputs, then you know it's a reinforcing loop. So that's the way you can identify your loops, right? So this is a big part of system dynamics, is the causal loop layout. It's not just a set of equations, which it is. You can look at it. It's the same set of equations, but you want to lay it out and give some causal, diagrams to it. So that's the paper I found. I put it on my Patreon. I'll stop sharing here. See what's going on in the chat again. Nothing really fancy. Sometimes, I find my Sunday show, and so I'm going to do some housekeeping here. But basically, you got the free-for-all, overshoot and collapse, global collapse 2030. I got my tin hat on. I'm ready. The asteroids are raining down. At this point, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and do the comment thing. That's really important. I got to try to get these videos out. But I do have some housekeeping. I'm not going to do a long show, maybe an hour-long show today. I got some other things to do. It's Sunday. I want to watch part of the baseball game here. Toronto Blue Jays doing really good. But I have some housekeeping. I'm going to start doing video vlogs on economics. So I've rebuilt the channel up to be a live stream channel, but I've had some people say, well, they don't want to watch 2-hour live streams. Some people do, and that's great. And I'm gaining more subscribers. I get to interact with you guys, but some people want direct to the point. So I will be doing that. I will also be releasing a system dynamic workshop course on my Patreon. And so depending on what tier level, there'll be 8 modules. So let's say you're on the first tier. I'm going to be charging $39 for each module. But if you're just part of the first tier and it's $5 a month, you're going to get that, right? If you're part of the second tier, which I think is about $10 a month American, somewhere around there, you'll get the first 2 modules, right? And then if you're part of the third tier, which is like $20 a month, you get 3 modules. And if you're part of the pro tier, $40 a month, you'll get 4 modules, right? And that's, for the price of essentially 1 if you do it that way. But if you don't want to be a Patreon member, people can just buy these different modules individually for $39.99. I'm doing my marketing, $39.99. I won't add that extra cent. I'm here to serve. And then, of course, the 4 other models, even if you are a Patreon member, you'll have to buy into them. It's something I've always wanted to do. It's something I want to give to my Patreon members. So I want them to get a discount deal. And you could, sneak in there, become a Patreon member for 1 month, at the top tier and get 4 modules. That's great. And you'll get other things, right? And so, other things on my Patreon, I've been slowly making sure that my blogs go out to my Patreon members first, all the tiers, right? For a week straight, get those first. Like models and stuff like this I did today in the papers, I'll give to the second tier, to the third tier. Frank, Astros. Anyway, so that's the housekeeping on what I'm doing there. Astros are a tough team, and I wonder if the Jays are facing them. Oh, are we talking about baseball? We're actually talking about, we're talking about space. I thought you were going to bring up baseball here. The Astros, they're doing okay. I think they're a wild card team, but you were saying something else. Asteroids, I'm assuming you mean asteroids hitting the Earth, while detrimental to current life on the planet, does add minerals on Earth depending on the makeup of the object. This is true. Maybe one day we're mining minerals, according to Elon Musk. You got to think about the energy conversion to do that, though. Like if we wanted to go mine the moon and stuff, the amount of energy we have to put out and what we have to bring back, it's enormous. It's an enormous dilemma, right? Right. It's, look at Tony. I'm sure we'll talk about this on Friday with Steve. But, all our productivity, and this is how I define it, is really just increased energy use. Right. So the human body, you put out 80 to 100 watts in an 8-hour workday. That hasn't changed since we were running on the planes. Okay. That hasn't changed. There's been no productivity gains there. Where our productivity gains came through the industrial revolution was entirely exploiting energy. Right. So more productivity means more energy. Right. And you might use some of that energy more efficiently over time. But if you take a look, and Steve uses this example all the time, right? If you look at the steam engine and all the innovation it brought, great. And then you compare it to like Elon Musk, one of his rockets, and the amount of energy it uses, right? Even though it uses each part per million, let's say, more efficiently, it uses a lot more of that energy that we have to extract. So to get so productive and so advanced and so innovative as a human species, to get to the moon or Mars, maybe, to extract its raw resources so we can use it to do more innovative stuff, it's exponential, right? And the question is, do we have enough resources, energy here on Earth that we can utilize? And we need like heat energy, like that hot. I don't know what, Tony, it's called, when we talk about, light energy. So, factory, the smolter factory needs heavy energy. What's it called? The difference where it's kind of hard for them to use solar in those environments. But anyways, I'm digressing. It's, an exponential situation. So that's my idea on energy, but that's a topic for Friday. And before Friday, I'm actually going to do another reaction show on Tuesday. So that's going to be interesting. I'm not going to tell you what the video is, but I can guarantee you I don't agree with the video and I'm going to react to it negatively. And that's the whole fun freaking part about doing a reaction video. What else is going on in the chat? Tony is going off, of course. Oh, yeah, the BC Lions suck. You know what? I don't watch the CFL. I don't actually. So here's the thing, Tony. I'm a hockey fan, and then I'm a baseball fan. So in the winter, I'm watching hockey. Baseball, I'm watching. In the summer, I'm watching baseball, and it lines up pretty good. So my Canucks, Vancouver Canucks, did not do good this year. They didn't make the playoffs, so they were already kind of out, and the baseball season was starting. The Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays, the only Canadian team there is, used to have the Montreal Expos. They started off weak, so I was like, oh, great. Gonna have a crappy Canucks season and a crappy Blue Jay season. The Blue Jays have turned it up. They're first in the East AL division, second in the AL overall, and fourth in the Major League Baseball. So they're cruising on their way to playoffs in October. They've got the month of September to go through and see where they settle. But as for football, I'll watch the NFL for betting purposes, but it's once a week. It's just not as an exciting sport, to be honest. I know you say, hey, watch baseball. Trust me, when every pitch, and this is what I tell Doug. Doug and I have fights about what's more dynamic, hockey or baseball. And I say they're both equally dynamic. The interesting thing about baseball is you can examine its dynamics because you're in discrete little measurable chunks, right? And so, if the bat's just a millimeter lower than the pitched ball, goes a completely different direction. And it's very exciting when you get close to playoff season. Like every pitch matters, right? You're tense, right? And the crowd's going wild, right? And I don't get that from football. Even though it's a faster moving sport, and hockey is super fast. It's exciting. It's, in my opinion, the most exciting sport on earth, right? You got hard hitting, right? Like just as hard hitting as football will ever be. You got fighting. Literally, you have fist fights during the game, right? That's exciting, right? The speed. It's the fastest sport on earth, right? And you're scoring goals, right? And that's just exciting to cheer. So that's me on oh, we got a good one here. Rob Pierce. Do you know any programs for good, and he's calling them CLDs, which is causal loop diagrams? And there's one program, and I'm going to look it up on Google because it's a good question. And it's not a system dynamic program, CLD maker. And I forget that I tried it once and I thought, oh, this is really cool. I think it was Fingba. Let me look here. Yes. So templates, causal loop diagram. That might not be it. That's one of them. There's a dedicated. You literally just Google it, and there's a ton. Systems thinker, dynamic, causal loop diagram maker. But you know what I use? So just Google it. But you know what I use to make causal loop diagrams that just look nice and traditional is Vincent. So just don't build a model. Just make the loops, and they have all the logos. So if you have, let's say, a delay in your loop, it's got that little delay logo. It's got the reinforcing or balancing loop little circle with the arrow, so you can put that in the middle of your loop, right? It's actually really good. It's and then you got system dynamic software if you want to, take that to the next level and make a stock flow diagram and then put equations in with it. That's cool. You can do that. So, but yeah, no, I just Google it. There's lots, but I don't use any. I have used like Vincem to make them. But honestly, like I'll just lay it out because I've done so many, like when I'm modeling, because that's my application is the model. I can see it like in my head, the feedback loops of the stocks and the flows. Like I can visualize it. And I know to a beginner that's a little harder, and so that's why I say, well, if you're a beginner system dynamicist, then just use Vincem because you can lay out causal loop diagrams all you want. And the difference between a CLD, a causal loop diagram, and a stock flow diagram is your causal loop diagram is just showing the causal effect between the variable names, right? And which way are they going? And are they a positive loop or a negative loop, or as we should say, balancing or reinforcing loop? Whereas a stock flow diagram, now you're defining what are your accumulators in the system, because in system dynamics, it's path dependent and you get your information from the stocks and how they change over time, right? That's the retention of information in the model. So you've got, and then of course you need flows, inflows, and outflows into those stocks. So you got the stock and flow diagram, and of course those will connect to your causal loop diagrams in a way, right? So that's a stock flow diagram. It's a little bit different. I could post maybe one day I'll post a picture. Let's post a picture. Let's get CLD versus stock flow diagram. So save that image. And that's one good one. Oh, and here's actually here's a good, very simple one to illustrate what we're talking about here. Save that image. Save. And then bring it up on here. Close out my Minsky because it's probably slowing down my audio and video. Slap this up right there. So this is the difference. So the top one is your causal loop diagram, right? It's inferring, okay, so if you got more population, your birth rate goes up, population goes up, reinforcing loop, and it's a self-reinforcing loop, right? It's taking information from the population and saying, okay, this is what the birth rate's going to be. It's going to increase the population. On the other side, you have your causal loop, and it's a balancing causal loop diagram. Population goes up, well, then there's going to be more deaths because there's more people to die, right? And of course, then that leads to more people dying. That is a reinforcing loop. But then you have your stock flow diagram, right? So you've got other parameters that come into play, but you've got your stock, your population, then you got a flow in, your births, and then a flow out, your deaths, right? And then you have your causal loop here. Let me remove Rob's comment. You've got your birth rate, and your birth rate's controlled by how many people there are, and then some constant, and they call it the fractional birth rate. So maybe it's, for 4% births, it's going to be 0.04 would be your constant there, and that would give you your births, right? And then your average, I don't know why there's a causal line here from average lifetime. This line shouldn't be there. Then you go over here, they're using a time constant. This is a time constant they'd be using. So it might be, 30 years is your time constant for your average life, and they divide. So this one would be multiplying. This one, they're going to divide the population stock, and then you get your amount of deaths. So that's the difference between a causal loop diagram, which is kind of like your preliminary model. So you're going to sketch out your model that way, right? And develop your system. Then you're going to employ it in a mathematical model, lay it out that way, do your math, etc., etc. And Tony's yapping CFL. This one right here. The CFL is one of the greatest leagues on the planet. It explains Canada. You can miss a field goal, but if you kick the ball far enough, you can still get a point. Okay, so the rules are bizarre, but I will give this about the CFL because it's a bigger field than the NFL, and you're 3 downs. Now the players, all the good players, end up going down to this NFL, but the play itself is because it's only 3 downs and it's a huge field. The quarterbacks are bombing these balls because they don't have that 4th down, right? So there's big bomb plays, diving catches. Whereas the rush game, I find in football, where the anybody that doesn't watch football, the quarterback hands it off to a running back, and the running back tries to run through the people, grab a few yards, get that last yard to get for the next first down. It, to me, is not that exciting, but the long bomb plays where the quarterback just hurls it and there's a diving catch downfield, that part's exciting. So the CFL's got that. What else we got? Go back here. It seems to be Dr. T talking about maths. right? Yankees fan. Well, as a Blue Jays fan, I can say fuck the Yankees because they're in the division. And last series, Blue Jays played the Yankees. It was a 4-game series, and they, let me get the broom out, swept the Yankees. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They aren't doing well, but they are in a wild card spot, but they are struggling. I watched to get. I think they're playing Boston right now, which they are second and third in the East Division American League, behind the Blue Jays, of course. And I think they're doing a series, and yeah, they are struggling. They kind of brought it back. They were really struggling a month ago. Fell down in the third. And then they kind of fought back up. They were in second again for a day or two, and then they lost to Boston again. So I'm watching them, but as a Blue Jay fan, you basically have to be mortal enemies with the Yankees, unfortunately. It's just the way it goes because it's a division rival. But I like the new playoff structure they got in MLB. It makes it more exciting. You got the 3 wild card, 3 division teams in each league. It's going to make for some good playoff matches this year for sure. What else we got going on here? We promoting drinking on the show. Hey, at Tony, sometimes less is more. Have a beer. Love your interventions, but you might come across as I have done elsewhere, Mr. Angry. You should see this guy, Dr. T. So I've done live streams with him. He is like Australians are just like Canadians, just they live, their brains are baked from too much sun. But just a rough and tough, swearing all the time. Just a rough guy all around the edges. Right, Tony? What else we got going on here? Any good relevant questions before I lock this up for today? I got really much else. I just want to kind of put that paper out and do a Sunday stream on it because I thought it was interesting. Simplifying. Steve Keen, my buddy Steve, always wanted me to simplify the World 2 model. The problem is I just don't like doing that because I like the complexity of model. I want to see all the feedback loops, right? Because that's how you know how to leverage a system. If you just simplify the system for educational purposes, okay. But like for policy purposes, well, you can't do anything with it. So, Tony, I have spent most of the last 20 years on mine sites in harsh environments. Yeah, that's what Australia. You live in one big desert down there, man. Yeah, freaking alligators, poisonous snakes, poisonous spiders. It's crazy. What do we got up here? Well, we do have mountain lions that will kill you. We have grizzly bears that will literally one swipe, they will kill you too. Black bears they'll usually run away from you. I guess we do have a black widow spider up here, which is deadly. Actually, BC has deserts in it as well. We're a very diverse region of Canada here, so we're on the coast. We got our coastal part. It's kind of like the California of Canada. Surf around the coast. Go inland, you got the coastal mountains with glaciers on them and rainforests. Then you go into the mid-interior of BC and you've got the rain shadow from those coast mountains, creates a plateau of literal desert, like, tumbleweed desert. There's rattlesnakes and etc. Then you go further east and you hit the Rocky Mountains and you're in huge glaciers, right? And you're in like God's country, right? Incredible views. But crocodiles. Did I say alligators or crocodiles? Those crocodiles are frightening to me. Like, how do you go swimming down there? They're all in the north, aren't they, though? The crocodiles. They're not in the south so much. Well, low global warming could be changing that. Yeah, just like, how can you go swimming there? Be scared. Snakes crawling in your bed. Spiders like this big. Like we have, like I said, the black widow, but it's very small. And it bite you. It can kill you. But nothing that big. We got some maybe about that big, our biggest spider here in BC, but it's very wet because most of the province is a rainforest aside from the desert plateau in the center. Yes, in the north. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, you don't want to mess with a crocodile. You don't want to mess with a mountain lion. You don't want to mess with a grizzly bear. Are all bad things. You know what I did see, though? That leopards are really good at hunting not big saltwater crocodiles, but I saw it in a documentary show in Africa. They will hunt alligators and pull them out of the water by the back of their neck and beat. I always thought, it's a little bit dangerous. And a big saltwater croc, yeah, it's probably going to win against a feline. But I was quite shocked that the leopards will kill mid-sized crocodiles. Incredible, because you just think a crocodile is at the top, the apex species, and maybe in the water. That's definitely the case. I think it was in Australia, a documentary of sharks getting attacked by saltwater crocodiles, right? So they are really at the, apex species out there. But then if you go into Africa and you got large crocodiles there, you have the hippos, which have no problems with crocodiles. In fact, their crocodiles are endangered from getting chomped on by the hippos. So then you could say, well, hippos are the apex predator. An adult lion or elephant, pardon me. I saw a video, and it was I think a croc was getting close to its baby, and that elephant had no problem crushing the crocodile to death. So it's all, I guess, spectrum of big who's the apex predator. I guess we exploit everything on this planet. So I guess maybe, if anything, the animals probably should be scared of us, which is unfortunate. Found white-tailed spider in my bath one day in Sydney. Not the worst, but nasty. Now, are those one of the big spiders? Just curious. So my wife, she hates spiders. I don't mind them too much, but I wouldn't want like a big spider crawling around. No thanks. Like nobody wants that. Is that a big one, Dr. T? Tony. A big saltwater croc can take on a Virginia-class submarine and win. Well, only the Australian ones. Yes, that's probably true. Dave, how you doing, buddy? Hope you are doing well. I don't really got much else. We're just yapping at this point. I did my presentation. I knew it wouldn't take long. I didn't have much else. I don't want to disturb people if I drag this out for too long. So I find half, only like 50 people drop in for the live portion. Then, I'm finding it about 300 to 400 views on these live streams after, right? And so they're expecting like a polished video, and they're wondering, who am I talking to right now, right? But I'm talking to you guys. So I don't want to drag this out too long, and that's why I think I should start doing vlog economic to the point videos again. I think I'm a little bit better at them. I've got an idea on how those should be, but I will still do the live streams because I like doing that. I just like yapping about economics and sometimes hockey and baseball, and now crocodiles and spiders. It was a small spider. Well, that's okay. We got lots of small ones here. I'm probably looking one down in the corner right now. And then over in this corner. All right, so we have lots of spiders here. Lots of bugs. We even had basically since 2018, we've had a problem with Japanese man killer hornets. Are huge. They're huge. They're invasive over here, right? And they'll attack our honeybee hives. Which is problematic, but the first document was found here on the coast in BC, and they've been trying to exterminate, and they're huge. You don't want to get stung by one of them. They hurt. I haven't been stung with one of them, but I heard they are extremely painful, and if you get caught in around their nest, you could be dead, right? So those suck. We're learning about animals today, right? We're learning about ecology, which is part of economics, right? So the ecology is part of our economic system. See how I justified that? Same with sports. It's a big business, right? The Yankees, Frank, what are they worth? $3 billion now? So It's part of economics. We're covering economics, guys. But anyways, I think that's about it for today. I'll see you on Tuesday. I'm gonna do video review. Any other questions? Before I go, do you have any statements to make in the chat? Do you have any profound things that are going to change my life? If you can do that, this is your chance. Change my life. Potentially, you're going to send me $1 million. $1 million still goes far. I know there's been inflation. But okay. Oh, yeah. And also, Tony, so I got your email about debt. I haven't replied back to it. I thought about I might cover it on a blog, on my Patreon, might cover it here. That's why I didn't comment back in the email. But yeah, there's that too. But that's another story, guys. It's another story. Anyways, make sure you're doing the like, you're doing the subscribe, you're doing the comment, hit the notification bell. Actually do comments after the video. If you're here watching this, type in great video or whatever, or Ty, you can go suck it, whatever. Put comments in because it just shows engagement. The channel's doing fine. It's just not, I'm not huge or anything, but over the last 6 weeks since I kind of come back and done this, it's done well. So I'm happy with the way things are going. You know what I forgot to put up too? I forgot to put up this. You'll see it in the background. There it is. So I got my logo. It flashes in the background. It's too bad I didn't put that on today. That kind of sucks. Anyways, see you in a couple days.
You are now relearning economics.